Adrian Clark was a man who seemed to have everything anyone could ever dream of. He lived in a grand mansion perched on a hill, with large windows that let sunlight spill into every corner of the house, and gardens so green and well-kept that they looked like they belonged in a magazine. The walls of his home were adorned with expensive paintings, and rare sculptures sat in every room, each telling a story of its own. To outsiders, Adrian's life was perfect. He was a successful millionaire, respected in the business world, and admired by friends and colleagues for his charm and intelligence, yet behind the walls of that grand mansion, life was not as simple as it appeared. Adrian had a daughter, Lily, a lively, curious 8-year-old who brought warmth and laughter into the house. Lily had soft brown hair that fell in gentle waves around her face, and her eyes sparkled with curiosity about the world. She was the light of Adrian's life, and he cherished every moment with her. They would spend mornings in the garden, where Lily loved to explore the flowers and chase butterflies, and afternoons in the library, where she would listen to Adrian read stories of adventures, treasure hunts, and faraway lands. On the surface, they seemed like the perfect father-daughter pair, sharing a bond full of love and laughter. Adrian's fiancée, Isabella, appeared to fit perfectly into this picture. She was elegant, poised, and beautiful, with a smile that seemed to light up the room. People often said she was the ideal partner for a man like Adrian, someone who matched his status, charm, and lifestyle. She moved through the mansion gracefully, her presence noticeable in every room, her voice smooth and polite when speaking to visitors, and soft and comforting when speaking to Adrian, but beneath her graceful exterior, there was something Adrian and Lily did not yet fully see. Isabella seemed perfect in every way. She wore fashionable clothes, knew just what to say in front of guests, and always offered a polite laugh at Adrian's jokes. She organized social gatherings, attended charity events, and was always the center of attention in a calm, sophisticated way. People admired her, and Adrian, proud of her, often boasted to friends and colleagues about how lucky he was to have someone so refined by his side. However, there were small moments that gave subtle hints that her personality might not be as pure as it seemed. Sometimes, when no one else was watching, Isabella's gaze would linger on Lily a little too long, and a faint frown would appear when the girl did something without asking her. Her words, although polite, sometimes carried a sharp edge that only Adrian did not notice because he trusted her completely. Lily, innocent and trusting, sometimes felt a strange tension in Isabella's presence, though she could never explain why. Even in her playful chatter, Lily would occasionally shrink back when Isabella approached, sensing an unspoken rule that she could not quite understand. Despite these small, subtle warnings, Adrian was happy. He believed that he had finally built the life he always dreamed of, a stable home, a loving daughter, and a partner who completed the family picture. Friends envied him, neighbors admired him, and even strangers on the street would recognize him and nod with respect when they saw him. In public, everything looked flawless, a life of wealth, love, and respect, yet, as it often happens in the most perfect-seeming stories, the cracks that would soon appear were already quietly forming, hidden under layers of smiles and polite conversations. In the mansion, every morning started beautifully. Lily would wake up early, run to her father's study to greet him, and together they would plan small adventures for the day. Adrian would laugh as Lily chattered endlessly about school, her friends, and her little discoveries in the garden. He would tell her stories of courage, honesty, and kindness, hoping to instill values that would help her navigate life. It was a world of comfort and love, a sanctuary from the busy, demanding life of the outside world, but little did they know, a challenge was quietly approaching that would shake the sense of security and perfection they felt. Adrian never noticed the subtle tension in the air, the way Isabella's smiles sometimes didn't reach her eyes, or how she occasionally gave orders to Lily in a way that made the girl hesitate. He was too busy with work, philanthropy, and showing Lily the world, believing that Isabella's presence only enhanced their happiness. He trusted her completely, thinking she only wanted the best for his daughter, believing the picture-perfect life they had built was secure. And so, the mansion, with its sprawling gardens, elegant rooms, and shining walls, became the stage for a story that was about to unfold. A story where love, trust, and appearances would be tested, and where the innocence of a little girl and the courage of those who truly cared for her would soon reveal that even the perfect life could hide secrets beneath its surface. Lily was not like most children her age. She had a spark in her eyes that made her seem older than she really was, a kind of curiosity that led her to explore every corner of the mansion she called home. The sprawling gardens were her favorite place, filled with fragrant flowers, winding paths, and hidden corners that seemed like little worlds of their own. She would run barefoot on the soft grass, feeling the earth under her toes, and sometimes lie down, staring at the clouds, imagining shapes of dragons, castles, and faraway lands. To her, every day was an adventure, full of small discoveries, laughter, and imagination. Her father, Adrian, adored these moments. He would often watch her from the balcony, a gentle smile on his face, letting her wander safely while he caught glimpses of her joy. He encouraged her curiosity, reading her stories of bravery and kindness, teaching her lessons of honesty, courage, and the importance of standing up for oneself. Lily felt safe, loved, and free in a way that many children only dream of, and for a while, everything seemed perfect. But with Isabella's arrival, the atmosphere of Lily's world started to shift, almost imperceptibly at first. Isabella was polite, kind even, in front of guests, but at home, her tone was sharper, her patience thinner. Lily noticed the subtle differences immediately, the way Isabella frowned if Lily left her toys scattered, or the quiet sigh when Lily asked to play outside longer. It was as if every small action of hers was being measured, evaluated, and controlled. Lily didn't understand why, but she felt it, a tightness in the air whenever Isabella entered the room. One afternoon, Lily stood by the garden gate, ready for a run through the flower beds, when Isabella appeared. "Lily, you must stay inside. Walking alone is not safe," she said, her voice calm but firm. Lily's heart sank. It wasn't the first time Isabella had said something like this, but the way she spoke now felt heavier, more demanding. The garden, once a place of freedom, now seemed restricted, as though invisible walls were closing in. Lily hesitated, unsure if she should obey or sneak out like she had done in the past. She tried to reason with herself. Maybe Isabella was right. Maybe walking alone could be dangerous. But the truth was, she had never felt danger in the garden before. Every flower, every tree, every corner had been her friend, her playground, her secret world. And now, someone was trying to take that away from her. Lily's small hands clenched into fists, not out of anger at Isabella, but from confusion and sadness. She wanted to run, to play, to feel the wind on her face, but she was not allowed. That evening, when Adrian returned from work, he noticed Lily's quiet demeanor. "What's wrong, sweetheart?" he asked, kneeling to meet her eyes. Lily hesitated, unsure how to explain the strange feelings Isabella's words had caused. It's nothing, Daddy," she whispered, forcing a small smile. But Adrian could see the tension, the unspoken worry behind her eyes. He wanted to comfort her, to reassure her, but Lily shook her head, afraid that speaking out might make things worse. For the first time, a shadow fell over the bright world of her childhood. Max, the young boy who lived next door, had noticed these changes too. He often watched Lily play from his window and began to see the subtle ways Isabella's presence affected her. The laughter was softer, the running slower, the curiosity restrained. Max was a sharp observer, wise beyond his years, and he felt a growing sense of unease. Something was not right, and he could see that Lily's spirit, which once shone so brightly, was being dimmed by rules and control that seemed unfair. Even so, Lily tried to adapt. She tiptoed around Isabella, careful with every word, every gesture. She smiled when she was told to, stayed inside when she was asked, and hid her sadness behind polite manners. But inside, she felt trapped, a bird whose wings had been clipped, unsure of when or if she would ever feel the freedom she once had. The garden, the flowers, the clouds, all her secret worlds, still existed, but they were now distant, almost unreachable. And yet, even in that silence and restraint, Lily's courage began to grow quietly. She started noticing small patterns, small ways Isabella tried to control everything, and her young mind began to think, maybe someone needs to know. Maybe someone will understand. And though she was still afraid, a tiny flame of determination flickered inside her, a spark that would not be extinguished, no matter how dark the days became. It was a bright afternoon, the kind of day where the sunlight spilled across the garden like golden silk, but to Lily, the garden no longer felt like her own. She stood by the old stone path, her small fingers brushing against the petals of the roses, hesitant to step further. Isabella was nearby, seated on a wrought iron bench, her eyes following every movement Lily made. There was a calmness in Isabella's face, almost like a serene mask, but Lily had learned to notice the subtle tension beneath it. That calm was not kindness, it was control, and control made Lily's heart beat faster. "Lily," Isabella called softly, "you must not walk in the garden alone. It's not safe, and I won't allow it." The words were simple, yet there was a finality in her tone that left no room for argument. Lily felt a sting in her chest, a mixture of confusion and frustration. She had walked these paths hundreds of times before, chasing butterflies, counting flowers, and sometimes even talking to the clouds as if they could hear her. But now, her freedom had been taken away, and she didn't understand why. She tried to argue gently, her voice barely above a whisper. "But Daddy says it's okay sometimes, the garden is safe." Isabella's eyes narrowed slightly, and her lips pressed into a thin line. "Your father may think so, but I decide what is safe in this house." "You will obey, Lily." The command was not loud, but it carried a weight that pressed down on the little girl's shoulders. Lily's small body trembled, not from fear of the garden, but from fear of defiance, fear of making someone she didn't understand angry. For the first time, the garden that had been her playground, her sanctuary, felt like a cage. The trees seemed taller, the flowers less friendly, and even the sunlight seemed to dim slightly in her eyes. Lily wanted to step forward, to feel the cool grass under her feet, to let her hair sway in the breeze, but she froze. Obedience had become a stranger she didn't recognize, and yet it seemed safer than the unknown consequences of disobedience. From the corner of the garden, Max, the boy next door, watched through the wrought iron fence. He had seen this before, noticed the way Isabella's presence restricted Lily's movements, the subtle but clear way she imposed her will on the girl. Max felt a surge of anger and concern. How could someone so small be forced to live under rules that didn't make sense? He clenched his fists, thinking of ways to help, though he knew that approaching Isabella directly might make things worse. He had to find another way. Lily looked down at her hands, clenching them into small fists. The flowers she loved seemed to whisper encouragement, reminding her of the joy she had once felt here. She wanted to break free, to run through the garden as she had always done, but the words of Isabella echoed in her mind, heavy and unyielding. "You will obey." It was a phrase that left her conflicted, torn between the desire for freedom and the fear of angering someone who seemed to control her world. That afternoon passed slowly, every second stretching longer than the last. Lily tried to play quietly, pretending to enjoy her toys indoors, but her thoughts kept returning to the garden. She imagined herself running along the paths, spinning around the fountain, feeling the wind on her face, and the sound of laughter filled her mind. It was a small rebellion, quiet but alive, a spark that refused to be snuffed out even under Isabella's strict control. When Adrian returned home that evening, he noticed Lily's quietness immediately. Her usual chatter about flowers, clouds, and playful adventures was missing. She barely looked up when he entered the room. "Lily, what's wrong?" he asked, kneeling beside her. She hesitated, unsure how to explain the strange heaviness she felt, unsure if she even understood it herself. "It's nothing, Daddy," she said, forcing a small smile, hiding the storm inside her. But Max had already decided he could not remain a silent observer. He watched Isabella closely, noting every harsh glance, every subtle restriction, and he began forming a plan. Someone needed to reveal the truth, someone needed to make Adrian see what was happening to Lily. The boy's mind worked quickly, understanding that sometimes adults needed a push, a moment of clarity, to recognize what children often could feel intuitively. And so, the stage was quietly set for a revelation, one that would challenge authority, expose control, and shine a light on the fear that had taken root in a little girl's world. Even though Lily did not yet know it, that forbidden walk was more than a restriction, it was the beginning of a test. A test of courage, observation, and love. And somewhere inside her, beneath the fear and confusion, the spark of resistance and hope had already begun to glow, waiting for the right moment to ignite. Max had always been a curious boy, the kind who noticed things most adults overlooked. From his small bedroom window next door, he often watched the mansion where Lily lived, fascinated by the sprawling gardens, the grand architecture, and the life inside that seemed both perfect and mysterious. At first, he had admired Isabella, seeing her elegance and calm presence. But over time, his sharp eyes began to notice small details that didn't fit the picture of perfection. He saw the way Lily's laughter softened whenever Isabella entered the garden, how her steps slowed, and the occasional flicker of sadness in her eyes. Max's young mind, though innocent, was perceptive. Something was not right, and he couldn't ignore it. That afternoon, as the sun dipped lower in the sky, Max watched Lily attempt to sneak into the garden when Isabella wasn't looking. The girl paused at the gate, her small hands gripping the bars, torn between fear and the irresistible pull of freedom. Isabella's gaze, however, was never far. Max noticed the subtle way Isabella's posture stiffened, how her eyes narrowed ever so slightly, and he felt a pang of anger. He realized that Lily wasn't just being controlled for safety, she was being restricted for reasons that had nothing to do with care or concern. Something deeper, something unfair, was at play. Max couldn't sit idly by. Though he was just a boy, he felt a responsibility to act. He had known Lily for years, sharing stories, laughter, and small adventures over the fence that separated their yards. She was clever, brave, and full of curiosity, the kind of spirit that shouldn't be stifled by someone else's rules. Max decided that he would find a way to make Adrian understand what was happening. It wouldn't be easy, adults often dismissed children, thinking they saw the world in simpler terms. But Max knew the truth, and truth, he believed, had to be spoken. He began observing Isabella more closely, noticing patterns in her behavior. Whenever Lily approached the garden, Isabella's expression shifted subtly, eyes cold, lips tight, voice calm but sharp. Max also noticed how she often moved objects, subtly rearranging Lily's toys or restricting her access to certain areas, under the guise of rules and safety. The more he watched, the more he understood that Isabella's actions weren't about protecting Lily, they were about control, about imposing her will where it didn't belong. Max's young heart grew heavier with every observation, filled with a sense of urgency and determination. One evening, Max decided to approach Lily, speaking softly from the fence. "Lily, I've noticed what's happening," he whispered, careful that Isabella wasn't listening. "You shouldn't have to stay inside. You should be able to play, run, and enjoy the garden. She can't control everything." Lily's eyes widened, a mix of relief and fear shining through. For the first time, someone outside of her immediate family acknowledged what she had been feeling, someone understood. It was a small spark, but it felt like the first ray of sunlight piercing through a cloudy sky. Over the next few days, Max continued to observe carefully, documenting everything in his mind. He noticed Isabella's methods, the subtle threats, the sudden changes in tone, the way she spoke to Lily in ways that made the girl hesitant to express herself. Max knew he had to act, but he also knew that timing was everything. One wrong move, one false accusation, could make things worse. He needed a way to show Adrian clearly, to make the millionaire see what Lily could not say on her own. And so, Max began planning, thinking of the exact words, the right moment, and the evidence that would leave no doubt. Through all of this, Max also began to notice Lily's quiet resilience. Even though she obeyed Isabella, she never lost her spark entirely. She still found small ways to enjoy the garden from the window, to talk to the clouds, and to keep her imagination alive. Max admired her courage silently, and it gave him strength. He realized that Lily's spirit could survive this control, but only if someone intervened. That realization fueled his determination, and he vowed that he would not allow Isabella's restrictions to continue without being exposed. And so, Max's young mind became a careful watchtower, observing, analyzing, and planning. He knew the coming days would be crucial, that the right words could change everything, and that courage, sometimes from unexpected places, could make even the smallest voice heard. Little did he know, his observations, his careful attention to every detail, were about to set in motion a series of events that would reveal the truth, challenge authority, and restore freedom to a little girl's world. Max knew he could no longer stay silent. He had been watching, noticing, and thinking for days, and the weight of what he had seen pressed heavily on his young shoulders. Lily's world was being controlled in ways no child should endure, and he understood that only someone with authority, someone who truly cared for her, could make things right. That person was Adrian, her father. Max also knew he had to be careful. Adults didn't always believe children at first, especially when the stories involved someone like Isabella, elegant and respected, who had a reputation for being flawless. But Max had seen enough to be certain, the truth had to come out, no matter the risk. The next afternoon, Max decided it was time. He waited until Isabella stepped away to attend to some household matters, then ran to the side entrance of the mansion, where he knew Adrian would be working in his study. Bursting in with the energy only a child could have, he shouted, "Mr. Clark! You have to listen to me." Adrian looked up from his papers, startled but curious. "Max? What's the matter?" he asked, noticing the urgency in the boy's voice. Max took a deep breath, trying to organize the torrent of observations he had stored in his mind. "It's about Lily and Isabella," he said, his voice trembling slightly but firm. "She's not being nice to her. She's controlling her, stopping her from walking in the garden, stopping her from playing, and Lily's really scared." Adrian's brow furrowed. "Controlling her? Scared? Max, are you sure?" "Isabella is supposed to be helping us, helping Lily," he replied cautiously, unsure if he was hearing the truth or a child's imagination. But Max shook his head vigorously. "No. I've seen it with my own eyes. She watches Lily all the time. She tells her what to do, how to move, what to play with. It's like she doesn't want Lily to have any freedom at all. She acts nice in front of you, but when Lily is alone, she's mean." Adrian sat back, the papers in his hands forgotten. A cold realization began to creep in, a quiet alarm ringing in his mind. Could it really be true? Could Isabella, who seemed perfect in every way, be acting differently behind his back? Adrian's eyes shifted toward the garden, where Lily's small figure could be seen playing quietly under supervision. He recalled the subtle tension he had noticed over the past few days, the moments when Lily's laughter sounded forced, the way she hesitated before speaking. Max's words made sense now. He felt a pang of guilt for not seeing it sooner, for trusting appearances more than instincts. Max didn't stop there. He described in detail what he had observed over the days, the sharp glances, the subtle restrictions, the quiet punishments, and the way Lily's joy had slowly dimmed. Each word painted a picture of control that could not be ignored. "You have to see for yourself," Max urged. "Watch her for one day. You'll see what I mean. She's not safe in the garden. She's not free." Adrian's mind raced. He realized that he had been blind to the small signs, the delicate signals of distress. And yet, as he looked at Max, he recognized the honesty in the boy's eyes, the courage it had taken to speak up. It was undeniable. Without hesitation, Adrian rose and walked to the garden. He watched Lily play, noting the careful steps, the occasional glances toward the house, and the way she seemed hesitant, almost measuring her movements. Then he noticed Isabella standing nearby, calm and poised, but the subtle tension in her posture betrayed her controlling nature. Adrian's heart sank. The boy had been right. Everything Max had described was true. For the first time, he saw what Lily had been experiencing, not through words or assumptions, but through the reality of his daughter's restrained joy. Returning inside, Adrian confronted Isabella. He asked calmly but firmly about her behavior, about the restrictions, about the fear that Max had so courageously revealed. Isabella tried to maintain her composure, but her carefully crafted facade cracked under the weight of truth. The confrontation was intense, a clash between authority, truth, and deception. Secrets that had been hidden behind polite smiles and elegant gestures were finally exposed, leaving no room for denial. By the end of the day, the revelation was complete. Adrian understood the depth of what had been happening to his daughter, and he vowed to restore her freedom and happiness. Lily, though still cautious, felt the weight lift from her small shoulders. Max, proud but humble, watched from a distance, knowing that his courage had made a difference. The house, once filled with quiet tension, now carried the possibility of trust, honesty, and the return of the joyful freedom that Lily had always deserved. Adrian's hands tightened around the papers he had been reading, but his mind was elsewhere. He had just listened to Max's brave confession, and now, standing in the quiet of the mansion, he felt a mix of anger, disbelief, and determination. Isabella, who had seemed flawless, composed, and trustworthy, was no longer untouchable in his eyes. Adrian knew that it was time for a confrontation, not a gentle question, not a casual conversation, but a direct, unflinching face-to-face that would demand the truth. He found Isabella in the sunroom, delicately arranging flowers in a crystal vase. Her movements were graceful, precise, as if nothing had changed. But Adrian's gaze was sharp, steady, and unwavering. "Isabella," he said, his voice low but firm, "we need to talk. Now." Isabella looked up, her calm smile still in place, but there was a flicker of uncertainty in her eyes. She had expected charm, persuasion, or perhaps hesitation, but Adrian's tone carried none of that. It carried authority and resolve, a clear signal that the mask she had worn for so long would not protect her today. "I've heard troubling things about your behavior toward Lily," Adrian continued, taking deliberate steps closer. "Max, the boy next door, has observed your actions, and I've seen it myself. The restrictions, the controlling behavior, the fear in her eyes, it's unacceptable. You need to explain yourself." Isabella's expression faltered for just a moment, the faintest crack in her composed exterior. "Adrian, I only want what's best for Lily," she said softly, but there was an edge in her voice that betrayed her attempt at innocence. "She needs guidance. She needs structure. You don't understand." Adrian held up a hand, cutting her off. "No, Isabella. What Lily needs is freedom, love, and trust. She doesn't need fear. And for days, I've allowed her spirit to be stifled under the guise of care. I will not allow it any longer." The words hung heavy in the air, echoing through the sunroom. Isabella's lips pressed together tightly, her eyes narrowing as she searched for a way to respond. She tried to maintain her poise, to reclaim control, but Adrian's steady gaze and unwavering voice made it clear that the power had shifted. This was no longer about appearances or etiquette, it was about truth, morality, and protecting a child. "You have been controlling her, Isabella," Adrian said, his voice rising slightly, not in anger, but in the conviction of a father who finally saw the truth. "Watching her every move, limiting her freedom, creating fear where there should be laughter, that is not care. That is control. And I cannot allow it in my home, in my daughter's life." Isabella's face flushed, her composure slipping further. She tried to speak, to twist the narrative, but Adrian held his ground. Every attempt at deception fell flat, exposed by the courage of a child and the honesty of a young neighbor who refused to remain silent. For a moment, silence enveloped the room. Lily, who had been quietly observing from the doorway, stepped forward, her small voice trembling but clear. "Daddy, she didn't want me to walk in the garden, or play like I used to," she whispered. Adrian knelt down beside her, pulling her into his arms. The warmth of his embrace contrasted sharply with the cold tension in Isabella's stance. "I know, sweetheart," he said softly, kissing the top of her head. "And it will never happen again." The father-daughter bond, strong and unbreakable, radiated in the room, a force that even Isabella could not challenge. Finally, Isabella's facade crumbled entirely. She realized that the control she had wielded, the subtle manipulations, and the hidden power she had believed was hers, had been exposed. Adrian's confrontation, grounded in truth and reinforced by evidence, left her no choice but to acknowledge defeat. Her attempts at justification faltered, her voice weakened, and in the face of a father's love and a child's resilience, she could no longer hide behind elegance or charm. Adrian stood tall, his eyes unwavering. "This ends now, Isabella. Lily's freedom, happiness, and trust are not negotiable. You will respect her, or you will leave. There is no middle ground." The finality in his voice left no room for argument. Isabella took a step back, realizing that she had lost the game of control she thought she could play. The house, once filled with subtle tension and quiet fear, now breathed a new air, a mixture of relief, justice, and the unshakable strength of family. And in that moment, Adrian understood something profound. True authority is not wealth, elegance, or appearance, it is honesty, love, and courage. And nothing, not even the most poised mask, could stand against that truth. The confrontation had left the mansion quiet, but it was a different kind of quiet now, not tense, not uncertain, but calm, almost peaceful. Adrian could feel the change immediately. The weight that had hung over Lily like a heavy cloud had lifted, replaced by something lighter, freer. The sunlight streaming through the windows seemed brighter, more welcoming, and even the flowers in the garden seemed to stand taller, as if celebrating a victory of truth and courage. For the first time in days, Lily's laughter rang freely through the halls, pure and unrestrained, filling every corner of the house with warmth. Adrian knelt beside Lily, holding her small hands in his. "It's over, sweetheart," he whispered. "No one will control you like that again. Your garden, your toys, your games, they're yours. Always yours." Lily's eyes, wide and shimmering, reflected relief, joy, and a cautious disbelief. After days of fear and hesitation, she could finally breathe, could finally run, spin, and play without worrying that someone's unseen rules would cage her happiness. She squeezed her father's hands tightly, silently promising herself that she would never let anyone take that feeling away again. Isabella had retreated to her room after the confrontation, leaving the mansion to its new reality. Adrian knew that dealing with her required wisdom, patience, and, if necessary, final decisions. But at that moment, his focus was entirely on his daughter. He wanted her to feel safe, to feel valued, and to know that her father would always stand between her and anyone who tried to diminish her joy. For weeks, he had trusted appearances, had assumed that kindness in words equaled kindness in action. Now he understood that freedom and respect for Lily's individuality were the true measures of care. Over the next few days, Adrian focused on restoring Lily's world. He cleared the garden of any unnecessary restrictions, moved toys back to the places Lily loved, and encouraged her to explore freely. He even built a small play nook by the fountain, where she could imagine, dream, and create without fear. Lily ran through the garden like a bird released from a cage, her laughter echoing through the mansion, her small feet leaving light imprints on the soft grass. Max, the young neighbor who had observed everything, became an unexpected hero in Lily's story. Adrian invited him over to the garden, thanking him sincerely for his courage and honesty. "You helped save Lily's happiness," Adrian said, smiling warmly. Max blushed, unsure how to respond, but the proud glow in his eyes could not be hidden. Lily ran up to him, hugging him tightly, whispering a heartfelt, "Thank you, Max." It was a moment of triumph, not just for Lily, but for truth, courage, and the power of speaking up. Life in the mansion began to return to normal, but it was a new normal. Adrian and Lily shared more laughter, more stories, and more adventures than ever before. The bond between father and daughter grew stronger, built not just on love, but on trust, honesty, and the courage to face challenges together. Lily felt empowered, her curiosity and spirit fully restored, and she knew that her father would always protect her, guide her, and listen to her. Every corner of the mansion, every flower in the garden, every sunbeam streaming through the windows became a symbol of her regained freedom. Adrian also learned an important lesson. Wealth, elegance, and appearances could never replace true understanding, attentiveness, and intuition. He realized that even the most seemingly perfect people could hide motives, and that it was essential to notice the subtle signs, to listen to the voices of those who are often overlooked, even children. He promised himself to always observe, to always ask, and to always trust the truth he could see with his own eyes. By the end of the week, the mansion was alive with laughter and joy. Lily danced through the garden, spinning under the sunlight, chasing butterflies, and creating imaginary worlds. Adrian watched from the veranda, a satisfied smile on his face, knowing that his daughter's happiness had been restored, that the shadows of fear and control had been driven away, and that the home they shared was once again a sanctuary of freedom, love, and warmth. And in that peaceful garden, Max, the brave boy who had dared to speak the truth, stood quietly beside Adrian, knowing that sometimes even the smallest voice could change the course of a life, and that courage, honesty, and love were more powerful than any control, any fear, and any secret that tried to hide in plain sight. The days after the confrontation were filled with a quiet kind of peace that felt almost magical. The mansion, once heavy with tension, now carried the lightness of truth, freedom, and healing. Lily ran through the garden with the ease of someone who had reclaimed her world, spinning around the fountain, chasing butterflies, and laughing so freely that even the trees seemed to sway in delight. Every corner of the house, from the sunlit hallways to the cozy nooks in the library, seemed to hum with warmth, a celebration of honesty, courage, and the bonds that had been strengthened through challenge. Adrian often watched Lily in these moments, reflecting on the lessons the ordeal had taught him. He realized that parenting was far more than providing comfort, wealth, or security. True care required attention to the subtle signs, listening to the unspoken words, and noticing when joy had been dimmed or spirit restrained. He saw now that freedom, respect, and trust were as essential to a child's growth as food and shelter. Lily's laughter, once tentative, had become a melody of confidence, curiosity, and resilience, a living reminder of what it meant to truly nurture a young life. Max, the young neighbor, became more than just a visitor to the mansion, he became a symbol of courage and integrity. His brave choice to speak the truth, even knowing the risk of disbelief, had changed the course of events entirely. Adrian often called him a little hero with a giant heart, and Lily never forgot the boy who had stood beside her when she needed a voice to be heard. The experience taught everyone that age did not define bravery, and that sometimes, it was the smallest, most observant eyes that could see the truth most clearly. Isabella had left the mansion quietly, leaving behind the lessons she had inadvertently taught without intending to. Her departure was a reminder that actions have consequences, and that pretending to care while controlling others could never last when honesty and love were present. Adrian realized that life could often be deceptive, and appearances could mislead, but the strength of character, the courage to confront wrongs, and the love that bonds a family would always prevail. He promised himself to remain vigilant, to always listen, and to never let fear or control overshadow the freedom and happiness of those he loved. Lily, for her part, had grown in ways even she did not fully understand. The fear that had once restricted her movements had been replaced by a quiet confidence. She learned that it was okay to question, to observe, and to trust her instincts. The garden, which had once felt like a cage, became a playground of imagination, a canvas for dreams, and a place where she could be herself without hesitation. Every step she took, every laugh she let out, was a triumph over fear, a testament to resilience and the power of being supported by love. Adrian also reflected on the importance of community, on the strength of those who notice when someone cannot speak for themselves. Max's courage had shown him that help could come from unexpected places, and that paying attention to the small details, the quiet observations, could prevent harm and restore harmony. The mansion was no longer just a home of luxury, it had become a sanctuary of trust, protection, and understanding. Adrian felt a renewed sense of responsibility, not only as a father but as a man who had learned the true meaning of care. As the sun set each evening, painting the garden in shades of gold and amber, Adrian, Lily, and Max would sometimes sit together on the veranda, sharing stories, laughter, and quiet reflections. The ordeal had left its mark, but it had also strengthened bonds, illuminated the importance of honesty, and reminded everyone involved that courage, truth, and love were far more powerful than control, fear, or appearances. The mansion had witnessed a transformation, not just of its walls, but of its hearts. And so, the story ended not with bitterness or fear, but with wisdom, growth, and hope. Lily had reclaimed her world, Adrian had learned the value of observation and trust, and Max had proven that even the smallest voice could make the biggest difference. The lessons lingered in the air, in the garden's breeze, in the laughter that echoed through the halls, and in the hearts of all who had witnessed the journey, that love, courage, and honesty would always triumph, and that even the darkest clouds could give way to the brightest sunlight.